Hey there kids, are you tired of having to care about other people? Do you cry and throw up every time your mummy says you have to share a little bit of your cookie with the other kids? Then have I got the philosophy for you. Say hello to objectivism. Objectivism's the hip new way of thinking that's got everybody talking. All your favourites are already hopping on the objectivism train like, Donald Trump, Rob Lowe, the guy currently in charge of the NHS. No, I am not kidding. So what are you waiting for? Get into the groove of objectivity by purchasing one of Ayn Rand's introductory bricks and start putting the paws in their place today! In 1926, a young Ayn Rand came from the Soviet Union to the United States with a dream to write the worst thing ever put down on paper and sell it for money. And just 17 years later, in the true American spirit, she achieved that dream with the Fountainhead, proving that any immigrant can come from nothing meaning as middle class as it gets, and achieve a dream in this great nation. Well, that great nation. Well, that good nation. Well, the book, very briefly, is about Howard Rourke, an architect who's doing dangerous and exciting new things with the buildings he designs, but then a big, mean socialist architecture critic comes along and tries to get him cancelled. And it takes Ayn Rand, hang on, 596,000 words to basically just do the Virgin versus Chad meme. I've read maybe a quarter of that book, and I would rather die, go to hell, and fistfight Ayn Rand for wasting my time than read any more of that book. I realise that's quite circular. Now, dear Ayn could have stopped there. She could have retired, started a podcast, driven her car full pelt into a wall, but greatness does not rest, my friends. And so, just 14 years later, Ayn Rand shitted herself and died. I kid. She did poop herself very publicly, but it was directly onto paper, which she then sent off to Random House. And it was a hell of a lot of poop too, because the first edition of this thing was 1,168 pages long. All of those trees were poor individuals too, Ayn, but you didn't think of that. The book was reviewed poorly, shocker, but was very popular among American conservatives, also a shocker, and still influences a great deal of right-wing politicians today, including, as I previously mentioned, former President Donald Trump and Sajid Javid, the Health and Social Care Secretary here in the UK, who is responsible for the National Health Service. Hell is empty, and all the devils are in Britain. And naturally, as with any book that's even vaguely popular, Hollywood came a-knockin'. That's Hollywood a-knockin' for you. Since about 1972, when Rand was still alive, a wide variety of people have tried to cram this turd through the studio pipeline with varying degrees of success. The closest that anyone got before sure, I guess you could call them films that we're going to be looking at today was when Lionsgate picked up the project back in 2010. A two-part screenplay was written, they were talking with maybe Angelina Jolie and Anne Hathaway about starring in it, but sadly, it all fell through. Damn it, I knew we shouldn't have let Lionsgate actually read the book. So now, businessman and #1 Rand fan John Aililoro was left with the right, and he decided that he was a true individualist like Ayn, so he didn't need Hollywood executives and big studio backing. He'll fund and cast and make the film himself. And so, in a brave act of defiance against the system, he decided to start filming on the 13th of June 2010, and it had nothing to do with the fact that the rights for the book expired on the 15th of June 2010. Now that's a patriot. The film was filmed, released, and reviewed. Badly, and much worse. And now, dear viewer, I have seen that movie. In fact, I have seen parts 1, 2, and 3 of Atlas Shrugged. I sacrificed my time, my life energy to deliver informative content to you, the true libertarian and objectivist patriots of this great nation, that great nation. So if you will, just for a second, stop checking what the age of consent is in Japan and turn your eyes towards me. I will give you exactly what you ask for, just like our dear departed Miss Rand would want. Let's waste no more time. Here, in all his glory, is Atlas Shrugged, Part 1. Yeah, movie's bad. Okay, I'll get a little bit more specific since you asked so nicely. In the distant dystopian future of... the United States is in crisis. The politicians are corrupt, unemployment is skyrocketing, and the American nightmare has finally come true. People have to rely almost entirely on public transport because gas is $37 a gallon. We start off with a bunch of guys in a threading argument about trains. Newt Gingrich's twin says to one James Taggart that his railway company, Taggart Transcontinental, sucks, and Taggart retorts with, "This is all watched on TV in a diner by already like our 7th rich old white dude. This is rapidly becoming an episode of Succession, and he is followed outside by some creep in a fedora who tells him that he's won the internet for today, good sir, and gives him all his updoots." No, he actually tells them that they're very alike in one of the most homo-romantic scenes I've ever seen in modern cinema, and I'm counting actual gay movies here.
Who's asking? Someone who knows what it's like to work for himself and not let others feed off the profits of his energy. It's funny. Exactly what I've been thinking. We're alike, you and I. Who are you?
Like, listen to that music. Look at the rain around them. This is the Oscar clip that they show for something set in 1958 called, like, Flowers of Desire. We then cap it all off with the beginning to an X-Files episode. So after Midas gets kidnapped, we cut to our girl boss heroine, Dagny Taggart, played by Taylor Schilling. You might remember her from me complaining about how her character in Orange is the New Black was dreadful bisexual representation, and now she gets to be dreadful representation for blonde Republican women too. We love versatility, don't we, folks? Dagny is the brother of... and they both run their little train company together, but they're in crisis because their trains keep crashing, which, contrary to popular belief, is not a great thing to happen when you're a train company. So because of the latest train crash, Dagny has gone over her brother's head. At least I think she has. I don't actually know what her job title is. Something made up and overpaid, probably. She's decided to contract a company called Reardon Steel to fix the broken line with its new Reardon metal, a completely untested metal that, as James helpfully tells us,
the consensus of the best metallurgical authorities are highly skeptical.
But Dagny disagrees with the expert assessments on the grounds of...
I'm not interested in their opinions.
And she studied engineering at college, so she has an instinct for these things. Just like how I study creative writing at university, which means I can say anything I like about a piece of media and it will immediately become correct. I'll give you a moment to finish laughing about how I spent $9,000 a year to study creative writing. I hope that was good for you. So Dagny goes to see Discount Alec Baldwin, aka Henry Reardon, and they have the most boring conversation of all time about steel prices.
What's the premium to rush these rails?
$40,000 a ton.
And that's the best price that you can give me.
I could charge you double and you'd pay.
You could. And I would. You need to have the
And he agrees to sell her his new super cool steel that's like magic or something. I don't know, man. We are 12 minutes in here and I'm really struggling to stay awake. I think I now finally understand why every libertarian is a little bit insane. After the meeting, Henry goes home where he's bullied by his wife and the comedian guy that Don Draper cucks in Mad Men.
You're garbage. And you know it.
Like, seriously, he gives his wife a steel bracelet, not the most thoughtful gift, but still pretty nice, and she's just like, blah, cringe, in front of all her friends. I mean, that's just cruel. I tell you what, if that was my wife, I would also do absolutely nothing. Henry Reardon, just like me, for real. Also, the one guy who's there representing a charity is, of course, a complete asshole who wants to suck Henry dry. Yeah, I can put that in. Of all his money so he can wire it to his charity, which is of course presented as an evil thing, so then we can make Henry look like the good guy for bravely standing up to the evil charity man.
You really don't care about helping the underprivileged, do you?
No, Philip, I don't.
So right now our protagonists are two assholes, but not like in a good movie where there's just something so watchable about how depraved they are, or maybe they have some redeeming quality that still makes us want to root for them. No, they're just soulless capitalists who make Mark Zuckerberg look charismatic, Jeff Bezos look compassionate, and make Elon Musk think about calling one of his 58 children from time to time, but I'm sure that we will see a positive change beginning them anytime now. A character arc has to start soon. Very soon. So after Henry is done being somehow both the most married and most divorced man in the world, we cut to Dagny's brother meeting with some shady evil government guys working on their evil plans. First of all, completely unrealistic since the American government has never been involved in any evil plans, certainly not against its own people. Their dastardly scheme is to introduce a bill which would restrict the amount of businesses that a person can own to one. And what a beautiful, shining example we have here of the massive leaps conservatives have to make when they're writing dystopias. The very idea that any branch of the American government would ever do anything that would even come close to stepping on the toes of billionaires is laughable. Ahaha! Ahaha! Like so. Again, these are the villains. I'm meant to sit here and be like, oh no, the billionaires are gonna have slightly less money. money. What a dark day for democracy. Although personally, I have to say that I do agree with Rand and the filmmakers here. I think this is the wrong way to deal with monopolies, both in America and in my country. Personally, my way of dealing with it would be rounding up every billionaire and then... Back at Taggart, Dagny decides to reduce the number of freight trains going down to Mexico because... Dagny?
I would have happily put a railroad in Mexico if there was a reason to build up the region. I didn't see one.
I am not touching that. Wow. Someone check Dagny's bed sheets for some eye holes, you know what I'm saying? Don't keep that in.
You can't just take everything away from people who need our help.
And right afterwards, one of Taggart's employees walks into the office and quits by asking, who is John Galt?
Who is John Galt?
Yeah, just like that. Yeah, you remember at the beginning of the movie where that rich guy got kidnapped by the Fedora man? Well, it turns out that potentially because of someone called John Galt, all the rich people are mysteriously vanishing. This is apparently a bad thing. Owen? What kind of loser would be walking around with a stupid idiot name like that? So, up until this point, I've been describing the plot fairly beat by beat, but this is definitely where the whole thing turns from a confusing to follow, if definitely flowing river of story to just sand and mud, and you can't tell where the riverbank ends and the plot begins, and you start wondering whether I should have rewritten this metaphor to be a bit less confusing. My point is that from now on, a bunch of stuff just kind of starts happening, and the characters in this story move their faces like they're in oblivion, so that combined with how boring this is, I have no idea how to react to anything. The Mexican government nationalizes this rich guy's mines, God, I wish that were me, and everyone sort of reacts to it like it's the worst thing ever, while also being extremely about it. And again, oh my god, I don't need Kubrick level shots here, but this is actually the best adaptation of a book to the screen ever because they've managed to preserve just how flat a book is. And then there's Dagny. Let's not forget about Dagny. Like I said earlier, she feels like the cold corporate girl boss in Act 1 of a movie where she learns to spend more time with her family or something. But she stays like that for the whole 2 hours. She's just an unpleasant prick to everyone, regardless of the environment she's currently in. The only thing that seems vaguely interesting here is the whole who is John Galt thing. Like, that's some good narrative tension, a good dramatic question. Why are all the millionaires disappearing? Personally, I still wouldn't look that gift horse in the mouth, but me possibly caring about this through line is completely ruined by everything surrounding it. I went into this movie expecting a shoddily made wreck, but it's just competent enough to not be a total Neil Breen level effort, which just makes it boring. And now all I can do is point and laugh at conservative ideology, which is already what I do all day anyway.
Socialism is based...
Okay, I feel like my little diatribe there may have derailed any chance that you have of following the plot, so let me try and get you back on track. Call me Dagny Taggart. Beep boop. Yeah, so as if things weren't bad enough already, we've also got a love triangle to contend with between these... Do they even legally qualify as people? I think you have to have a certain amount of organic material left in you for that. Regardless, you can see here that the chemistry between them is just like nothing ever put to screen before or since.
There is so much at stake. We have to make it.
Like, it's bad enough I'm supposed to care about whether these two jackals who piss blood every time they hear the word union lose their businesses or not. Now I have to care about whether they get to grind up against each other like two emotionally dead buzzsaws too. What is this, sex with my ex-wife? So the next scene to be tossed in front of us like a cat with a dying pigeon is some guy from the State Science Institute, I looked them up, they're not real, asking Henry to sign over the rights to Rid and Steel. But Henry refuses because this guy won't say whether his metal is good or not like 3 times, and it's just as dumb as it sounds.
Is Reardon metal good or not? Tell me if Reardon metal is good or not, and I'll sell you the rights. Is Reardon metal good or not?
Tell me it was good. Tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm good.
Ah, you make a very good argument for regulating my business, Mr. Government. But you have failed to consider that here I have drawn you as a Wojak. Yet again, ridiculous to suggest in this situation that the United States government would be doing anything other than dropping to their knees to deep throat Reardon's boots, and they probably make him Treasury Secretary too. There's also this line when the guy is leaving.
Because it's mine.
Which I think is meant to sound like some badass libertarian rallying cry, but actually just comes out like a toddler throwing a tantrum because his toys got nationalized. We also find out later, and I can only apologize for spoiling this titan of film for you, that Henry Reardon owns like 5 different companies with his name on it, so why does he specifically care only about this one? In fact, unless he has a science degree that we found out about while I was halfway into my coma, Henry did not come up with the formula himself. Presumably no one person did unless they've got Tony Stark on the payroll. And you know what? That's just perfect. We are halfway through part 1 of this 3-part mess, and we already have the perfect summation of every hole in this thing from an ideological standpoint. A multi-millionaire steals credit from a nameless someone, presumably several nameless someones, for something that they did not come up with, and then they throw a tantrum when the government comes along and does the exact same thing to them. The evil government. And what the hell is Scully from Brooklyn Nine-Nine doing in this? Okay, I'm going to do my best to speed through the rest of this thing on a surface level, because that's my deeper analysis right there, okay? Conservatives are dumb, and they contradict each other constantly. Who could have guessed it? Me, I could, you're welcome. So because Reardon refuses to bow to the literally 1984 government, the State Science Institute starts issuing threats to sitting representatives like they're the CIA and not just r/Science's awesome users with government funding. Just shove them in Pelosi's locker, man, you'll be fine. Dagny pays the SSI a visit and finds out they're being pressured by the government to lie about Reardon's steel being unsafe because the government wants to control free enterprise and this lie is also tanking Taggart's stock, and so Dagny comes up with the genius idea to leave Taggart, form a new company, and then get Taggart to transfer the train line to that new company where she will get it finished on time. I would like to remind you, dear viewer, that a major conceit of the plot thus far has been our rich protagonist worrying about what's going to happen when the government makes it illegal for someone to own more than one business. And then Dagny just goes and does this. Won't someone please think of the 1%? Dagny then decides to embody the ideals of individualism by going to her rich ex-boyfriend and begging him for money, which is nothing like the inherent evil of getting assistance from the government because, oh, yeah, Dagny has a rich ex-boyfriend called Francisco.
Francisco, that's fun to say. Francisco.
Who actually appeared a bit earlier in the film, but I didn't mention him because his contribution to the plot so far has been capitalism enjoyer number 4 million. His Mexican mines were the ones that got nationalised earlier, which I was a bit confused by because that's clearly the wrong tint for Mexico. Dagny also gets denied a loan by every bank going. I guess they must be filthy anti-business leftists now too. And then she goes to her other rich friend, Hank the People's Bank Reardon, who just gives her the money. You see everyone, this is the free and fair market where if you want to start a business, you just hit up a couple of your millionaire friends for a loan. What's that? You want to start a business and you're not already insanely rich? Why do you tarnish this land with your wanton filth? Then Dagny and Henry find out that Congress somehow managed to pass the Equal Opportunity Bill faster than they passed anything ever. Seriously, it's been like 3 weeks, not even a functioning democracy could do that. And Reardon panics because his life is over and his empire is being ripped away from him before he immediately transfers one of his companies to his friend, who assures him that the company is basically still his anyway.
This is just a technicality, Hank. Okay. I'll always consider the ore mine as yours. You know you'll always have as much ore as you need.
Well, 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 looks like Owen was right after all. Let me just add that to the chart. Perfect. The Union of Locomotive Engineers then tells Dagny that they won't let their workers work on a line made out of a completely untested metal, and Dagny exercises her constitutional right to whine about it.
You can do whatever you want with your men, Mr. Brady, but that train will run if I have to drive the damn thing myself because, Mr. Brady, if that bridge collapses, there won't be any rail.
Some other BS happens, I really do not care at this point, resulting in Henry and Dagny getting to ride the new line, or a train simulator game from 2006, either way. They take the train to the oil fields of the rich guy they built the whole thing for in the first place and have sex out of wedlock! Oh god, how can this claim to be a sterling example of conservative film with this kind of moral filth in it? What if my kids who don't talk to me anymore see this? While they're boning, John Galt shows up like he's an inspector calling, that's one for all the GCSE English literature students out there, and whisks Wyatt away to his gay commune, I'm assuming. He hasn't picked up any women so far, that's all I'm saying. Oh yeah, another thing I forgot is that earlier on, Henry Reardon found a schematic for a new kind of engine designed by someone who used to work at the 20th Century Motor Company. How did he find this schematic? So Dagny and Reardon dick around the entire country for a bit, looking for the mysterious inventor of this engine, while the government decides to limit the railways more, specifically to piss off Dagny. And then Wyatt sets his oil fields on fire, drops a voice note saying that he's on strike, but not like the good kind of strike, and that's it, end of part 1. That was so much. And yet, nothing at all. In describing the plot of this film to you, I simultaneously felt that I've left out too many plot details while also leaving too much in. Part 1 suffers from the usual issues of any other Part 1 book adaptation, all build up and no payoff, a sudden and unsatisfying ending, characters and subplots just kind of hanging around because they don't have anything to do yet. But unique to this part 1 is the fact that I do not give a single solitary shit about any of these people. Every character in this is either cartoonishly evil while also saying things like, hey, maybe we shouldn't sacrifice hundreds of workers' lives just for the Dagny Tiger ego jerk-off variety hour, or they're soulless capitalists who I'm meant to root for because they're fighting for their right to hoard steel. It doesn't even matter what your political opinions are at this point. Like I said earlier, just doing the Virgin versus Chad meme for 2 hours is not a good way to sway me using your serious political drama. And not to fulfill my destiny as a white male video essayist too hard, but films like The Social Network do show that pretty dry business dealings can be turned into genuinely compelling drama. But in Atlas Shrugged, we get... Thankfully, the public saw it this way too. Critics trashed it, and all but the most die-hard Rand fans recognised it for what it was, a total train wreck. And so, the people who made and financed it stuck true to their ideology, realised that the free market had well and truly spoken, and decided to call it a day. Are you fuck... Could just end the video here. No one would blame me. So not a single member of the original cast, or even the director from the first movie, returned for this one. I can't imagine why, although it actually did end up with a higher budget. This total overhaul of the cast results in every other line for the first half of this thing being essentially, "Good afternoon, full name and title. I was just thinking about the exact details of what happened a few hours ago. Yes, full name, so was I. How about we engage in a discussion about the themes?" Now I'm really going to have to open my third eye to describe the plot of this one to you, because it turns out that adapting just the middle of a book, and not even a particularly good book, leads to some interesting results. Let's get it, shall we? So Dagny's found a scientist to help her figure out how the 20th century magic engine works, because a lot of them are still vanishing with the creepy guy in the trench coat. She also has to kill one of Taggart's train lines because some coal business guy disappeared and the government nationalised it, and oh my god, this shit really is kind of repetitive, isn't it? No wonder conservatives love it so much. It's like jingling keys in front of a racist toddler. And then we get to go and see what Henry Reardon has been up to. Okay, also a different actor. I wonder how different the vibe with him is going to be.
Tell your people that I will not sell any Reardon metal to the State Science Institute.
Now they're welcome to come down here with their trucks and their guns and seize as much metal as they want.
Oh. My god. So, Dagny in part 1, soulless girl boss capitalist. Dagny in part 2, soulless girl boss capitalist. Henry in part 1, blandly stoic capitalist. Henry in part 2, man who is seconds away from ripping open someone's throat if they even think about trying to make him give his workers healthcare. You know what? I'm a capitalist now. And I'm also rock hard. So Henry 2, the Reardening, chads all over someone from the government trying to steal his precious stuff yet again, someone who is literally called Mr. Small.
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
And then we cut over to Dagny's brother to find out that he's Howard from Better Call Saul?
There's really no need to...
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
So poor old James Taggart really ended up falling into irrelevancy in the latter half of part 1, to the point where I literally had to go back and recheck what his first name was. But from what I can remember, this is a pretty massive vibe shift. In part 1, I don't think we ever actually saw him not being moody in a poorly lit room, but in his first scene in part 2, he's vacantly browsing all the ties in what appears to be a Target, somewhere that millionaires definitely shop. And then one of the shop assistants rushes up to him because she just has to tell the train magnate how much she loves his work. This is a real thing that has absolutely happened before. And then he immediately takes on a date to a piano recital. James in part 1 couldn't even spell the word sex. Now he's being a horny playboy? Forget Reardon, maybe he's the most likely to be Batman.
So, the next time that you want to come in here and tell me what I'm doing wrong, you are welcome to keep it to yourself. Because I don't care.
Oh, and the pianist disappears. Government tried to nationalise his fingers, I guess. And just a little sidebar here before we continue. Maybe sitting through part 1 has just irreversibly altered my brain chemistry, but I genuinely do think that part 2 has slightly better directing. Slightly. This doesn't mean I think it's well directed, mind you. I think Riverdale probably still has best cinematography. It's just that every shot in part 1 was murky and dark, apart from the occasional Acme headquarters scene. Meanwhile, part 2 is... okay, I think it literally is just because it's brighter. Sue me, okay? I like to see what's going on in a movie.
Who is John Galt?
Well, now I just don't know what to think. Anyway, shut up. This thing probably has a plot, right? Let's see what's going on over there. So, Mr. Libertarian Well, at least it wasn't on a brick this time. He makes a deal with the coal guy to buy some of his Reardon metal despite Uncle Sam telling him not to. What a little rebel, and then he fights with his shape-shifting wife some more.
James Taggart's wedding is this evening, remember?
Wait, what? Howard is marrying the woman he met in the shop literally not even 10 minutes prior. I'm not kidding. They met in the shop at the 19-minute mark, and the boomer sitcom wife tells us they're getting married right at the 27-minute mark. Oh, sure, when Howard Hamlin from Better Call Saul takes a woman on the first date to watch someone's kidnapping, he gets a new wife out of it, but when I do it, all I end up with is a lifetime ban from Dave & Buster's. There aren't even any Dave & Buster's in this country. I don't know how that... So, yeah, sure, James is getting married now to this woman he grew in a lab, and Dagny's ex-boyfriend Francisco shows up to tell us exactly what Ayn Rand is thinking right now. You know, apart from, oof, owie, it sure is hot down here.
Having money is not the measure of a man. What matters is how he got it. If he produced it by creating value, then his money is a token of honor. But if he's taken it from those who produce, then there is no honor. And you're simply a looter.
Francisco based? No, of course not, because like a lot of conservative economic rhetoric, it nearly hits on making a decent point about the nature of money in society and production and people's relationship to that production before becoming... even calling it unhinged would be charitable.
When money ceases to be the tool by which men deal with one another, then men become the tools of men. Blood, whips, chains, or dollars, take your choice. There is no other.
Hang on, mate, I just want to make sure that I get everything down here. Can you go back to the part about the whips? Oh, and then he tells Reardon that he's going to blow up his own mines because,
Money's the root of all evil. So I just got tired of being evil.
Whoa! That's interesting, but I sure don't care.
Then Reardon gets to fulfill every boomer man's fantasy by banging someone who isn't his wife and then telling his wife that he wants a divorce, at which point she calls him a mole.
You're a mole, Henry.
Got him? Then we cut to Reardon Metal, looking like a rejected Goldeneye level, where Henry gets found out about his little deal with the coal guy. I don't know if he was actually expecting the government not to find out about a very on-the-books business deal. It's like he's surprised that he's being reprimanded for pulling his dick out in public and yelling, "Fuck you, Mr. President." Based, to be fair. And the government guy tells him that they basically own his ass now, otherwise they'll put him on trial and arrest him. Oh no, I cry every time. So Dagny goes to see the coal guy. The coal guy gives her the same, "I just can't do business anymore, America used to be great," spiel, and then he runs away to Big Gay John's Big Gay Island, no girls allowed. Like seriously, not a single woman has left to go and frolic in this supposed libertarian paradise yet. I can't understand why a woman might have reservations moving to a place full of men who can do whatever they want with no government oversight. It boggles the mind. Then we're treated to Reardon and Francisco sitting on their asses and talking about capitalism again. My god, if they cut all of these movies together and they only included the scenes where something actually happens, it would be one movie and it would be 30 minutes long. And it would still be 29 minutes too long. To be fair, this scene does set itself apart from the other bland dialogue scenes because, for some reason, they decided to score, write, and play it like Palpatine manipulating Anakin Skywalker to the dark side.
Is that what you wanted?
I'd blow up my nose first.
Then why don't you, Mr. Reardon? That time and those people are upon you.
Good.
Again, a reminder that Francisco is meant to be in the right here. He's been gulp-pilled while Henry is still quivering under the strong, supple boot of daddy government. Am I horny? Oh, and of course, how could I forget the moment that you've all been waiting for? Get ready, my friends. Here it comes.
If you saw Atlas, the giant who holds the world on his shoulders, with blood running down his chest, knees buckling, arms trembling, but still trying to hold up the world with the last of his strength, what would you tell him to do?
What would you tell him?
To shrug.
He said it, kind of. He sort of said the title. Let's go. It's all been worth it just to get to this moment. And you can call me Atlas because I am also shrugging. What the hell? That's why it's called Atlas Shrugged, because Ayn Rand wrote some edgy Reddit speech about how the world isn't worth saving, man. Humans are the real virus, dude. You guys, I'm starting to suspect that part of the reason why these movies aren't good is because the source material's not very good either. How could the free market do this to me? Its biggest supporter. Oh, and right after this, some of Reardon's plant blows up. Which, maybe kind of proves that the evil government had a point about old Henry having unsafe business practices. Unless they sabotaged him just so he would look bad so they could take more of his metal. It's all connected, I just know it! Dagny, meanwhile, is finding out more about the magic engine with another scientist friend, and I genuinely had to go back and make sure this wasn't the same guy as before. That's how little I care about this plotline. And then, right back to Reardon, who is on trial for violating the Fair Use Act, even though the guy before said they wouldn't do that if he sold them his steel. That darn tricky government. This trial also appears to be happening inside of a community theatre? Looks like the alternate 2016 America finally defunded the Supreme Court. Good for them. Now, do you remember back in the day when someone on Tumblr would make a long text post about how their teacher said that fanfiction was bad and for losers, and then they stood up in class and said how Destiel was actually going to save the world and the teacher was being so close-minded, and then the entire class clapped?
I do not recognize the good of others as a justification for my existence. If their fair share demands that I get nothing for my labors, that it requires me to be a victim, then I say, public good be damned, I'll have no part of it. And I believe most of my fellow men would say the same, if they had a voice.
See, I know that some people in the audience will want me to break down each and every time one of the characters in these movies goes off on a long monologue about laissez-faire capitalism, but the thing is that they're all the exact same. It's an identical structure and point being made, and I use the term made extremely generously here, every single time. Some weak, feeble-minded government stooge says, "Oh, don't you think we should try and help other people?" And then the base turbo-chad capitalist says, "Good sir, that is communism." And then the music swells and the crowd goes nuts and Henry Kissinger gets another year added onto his unnatural life. Now imagine this happens 48 times and you have to sit through every single one because you vow to watch all of these movies even if it kills you. So the court decides that punishing Reardon too harshly would make him a martyr and let him off with a slap on the wrist. I'd ask what weirdos among the general public would be holding up Henry Reardon as an icon worth defending, but any look at the replies of an Elon Musk tweet will answer that. After that, it's time for a meeting of the board at Taggart Transcontinental. Remember them? Which is for some reason shot like they're about to intro the new Suicide Squad.
So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
And here's a perfect example of what I was saying earlier about how they choose to show this subject matter. This is a boardroom meeting, okay? Often a pretty dry scenario, but in lots of other media, including some I've already mentioned, there are ways you can write dialogue and move the camera and direct your actors to soup the scene up a little, make your audience pay attention and take clear notice of what the stakes are, and get invested in all the little nuances and subtle power plays. But this is how Atlas Shrugged Part 2 chooses to show its boardroom scene.
Shut down the routes that aren't paying.
A bold idea.
Where do you suggest we start?
The John Galt line, it was a dumb mistake to begin.
Huh? What's going on? They find Jimmy Dalt yet? Sorry, what's this scene about? Oh, right. They close a new train line that Dagny opened in the last movie because it's losing the money or something, and Dagny doesn't like that and leaves. Okay, I definitely care about what happens to her, so that's good to know. In fact, now might be a good time to see an update on Dagny's character arc. Let's see that status. Ooh, you hate to see it. So I sort of gave part 1 the benefit of the doubt in terms of characters not growing or changing at all because it's only adapting part of the book, right? It's only part 1. But now we're in part 2, I expect to see a little progression here. Something to shake the values of our main character, which is apparently Dagny and also Reardon, sort of. I mean, he kind of just shows up every few minutes to go, "Where's my steel?" And then everyone claps again. The closest that we've gotten to seeing any change at all from Dagny is her kind of umming and ahhing on whether joining Galt's gang is a good idea or not. Oh, you know what? I'm in a good mood. Let's go ahead and bump that rating up. Wowee! No brakes on the Taggart train. Which is probably why they keep crashing, actually. So next, some guys from the government, along with James Taggart, meet in the dedicated evil schemes room of the Capitol building. They decide to issue a directive which prevents anyone from being hired or fired or quitting their jobs, requires all companies to produce the exact same amount of whatever they were making as they did last year, and also seizes all patents from private industry.
I think everyone here agrees that capitalism doesn't work.
Again, this movie is chasing its own tail, but this time it's not even like socialist policies if you squinted at them through a telescope after spending 3 days huffing Reardon Metal's poorly ventilated foundry. It's just like what the Joker would do if he was president. No ideology or guiding principles behind any of these decisions. It's just guided by what will make Henry Reardon cry and scream and throw up the most. There's an epic montage of people rioting over these new decisions, and I promise you that you will never guess how it ends. The way the music swells, how they cut back to the guy multiple times before this to build up the tension. What is he writing? What great wisdom could he be about to impart? And then we get their epic conservative subreddit post. Americans, please tell me in the comments, does this do anything for you? Does this activate the patriotism chip in your brain and make you want to run me through with a bayonet? You know, more than usual. Our hero, Hanky Reardy, of course, valiantly stands up to defy this new directive because he won't be pushed around by big government. Unfortunately, he's let himself be pulled around by his own wang and he gets blackmailed with some photos and signs over the patent for Rearden metal to the government. Let this be a lesson to you kids, don't you ever... have straight sex? Dagny finds out about Rearden's capitulation and quits her job, also defying the directive. And she gets absolutely no legal repercussions for this, she just goes and chills at her little lake cottage. I guess even in this dystopia, the law is still optional for rich people. This has got me wondering about how this directive would even work. So let's say I'm a doctor and I decide to murder everyone in the hospital. I haven't had my morning coffee yet, you see. Does that mean that they can't even fire me? The police can show up, they can arrest me, they can put me on trial, they can throw me in jail for the rest of my life. But I still get to collect my paycheck every day until the day I die. See you guys in a bit. Don't touch my sim saves. So without Dagny's invaluable expertise, sure, Taggart Transcontinental is forced to rely on the incompetence that it has left since it can't hire anyone or fire anyone. But in a genuinely heartwarming moment for the movie, the employees in the control room do manage to pull together and work as a team to make sure that the trains get where they need to go. Yeah, as if. They make such a big doo-doo mess of everything that two trains end up crashing headfirst into each other and kill everyone on board. One of them was a passenger train carrying some of the rich congressmen, and the other was an army train carrying American soldiers. Eddie calls... Oh my god, yeah, I haven't even mentioned Eddie at all yet, have I? He was in part 1 and now he's in part 2. He works at Taggart. I think he's Dagny's assistant, or maybe he's James's assistant, or maybe he's no one's assistant. I genuinely do not know. His entire narrative function thus far has been to occasionally pipe up and be like, shit's kind of fucked around here, Mr. Taggart, and then he retreats back into the wall like Homer Simpson. I can only apologise for preventing you from knowing about such a crucial part of the narrative. I can only promise you that it will happen again. So Mr. Featured Extra tells Dagny, who's still dicking around in her cottage, that the trains have crashed and that she should come back to the company, and Francisco is there to say, no, Dagny, don't go back! So Dagny goes back, fixes everything while embarrassing her brother in the process, then leaves again because she just remembered that she told some guy to look into that magic engine she found in the abandoned car factory. But oh no, before Dagny can get there, science guy gets gulted!
Hello?
Are you ready, Mr. Daniels?
Okay, we now know explicitly the Galt is running some kind of paradise here. Why are these still filmed like kidnappings or the beginning to an adult film?
Are you ready, Mr. Daniels?
So on the way to the science guy, Dagny's hunk of junk train breaks down and it's subtly implied that the guy who comes to fix it used to work at the 20th Century Motor Corporation. So now's Dagny's chance to find out exactly what happened. Why did the corporation shut down? Well, why don't you have a guess, kids? Why did the 20th Century Motor Company shut down? Did it A, forget to salute the flag every morning, B, fail to survive in the egalitarian environment of the free market, or C, do a socialism? We'll be back with the answer after these messages. This one's from your dad. He says, fuck you. It was C. Of course it was C.
What happened there?
The idea was that everybody would work to the best of his ability, but be paid according to his needs. Yeah, it fell apart pretty quick. The best workers had to work harder, and the needy got needier. Worker turned against worker.
Again, this is not socialist or communist thought. This is just taking the from each man's means to each his needs line and applying it to a car factory where no shit it wouldn't work because a car factory is not a microcosm of wider society. Everyone employed by a car factory is already there to work, to produce. Honestly, when Dagny asks,
how would they know whose needs came first?
She's right. Do they put a quota up every month of who's the best and who's the most crap at their job and then the guy at the bottom gets paid the most? Is it an extra $1 an hour based on how many good noodle stars you have on the board? And every man will work to the best of his ability is already how most workplaces function, and everyone will be paid according to their need is like the inverse of how most workplaces function. The ones who could use that money the most are usually the ones being paid the least. The best workers had to work harder. Why? Why would they? Because apparently at Marx Automobiles Inc., if you want more money, the best thing to do is sit on your ass. But that turns worker against worker, and you've actually perfectly illustrated the problems and lack of solidarity that spring up when you don't have a union and use your bargaining power to demand that your boss stops forcing such an arbitrary pay system on you, Eind, you stupid dead I don't think I like movies anymore. All bad. So Dagny also finds out from this guy that John Galt was a worker at the factory who walked out over this new socialism and then takes the guy's car to get to her science friend quicker. But she gets a call from the science guy on the way where he mysteriously says he's quitting, so she decides to go and buy a plane to chase him down. Okay. And so here we are again, with Dagny about to crash a plane right into a mountain. I can only hope. Here it comes. Here it comes. She crashes the plane. John Galt, if he wasn't unlocked in Smash Brothers yet, saves her. End of movie. Go home. Now, this may strike some viewers as harsh, but I believe that no conservative should ever be allowed to make a movie ever again. Sorry, Clint Eastwood. Sorry, John Voight. Sorry, Gina Torres, although I think she actually took herself out of the game on that one. But Atlas Shrugged Part 1 and 2 was simply a bridge too far. Oh, but Owen, I hear some of you cry when I'm nesting in your walls at night. We can't just ban all conservatives from cinema. That's literally 1984. That's barbaric. You want to know what's barbaric? You want to see the things that I've seen with these two eyes? Don't say I didn't warn you. Roll it. Actually, before we enter hell, you'll probably remember, if you knew anything about these movies beforehand, that Part 3 is the one that they had to crowdfund because the other two lost them the amount of money needed to, cure world hunger. Another victory for the free market. Honk if Thatchers, etc, etc. But it actually gets even weirder than that. Turns out that they already had the money to make the movie from the get-go. They only went to Kickstarter to raise money for the marketing campaign. It also seemed to be some bizarre gambit to greatly raise the profile of the film by epically triggering the left. Mission accomplished. So anyway, no further ado, let's go ahead and double the amount of people that have actually seen this thing. So we begin by finally getting to see the mysterious John Galt standing up to the big commie meanies at the 20th Century Motor Corporation, and he's literally just some guy. I'm sorry, this is not who we saw abducting all of those millionaires with his trench coat and fedora, okay? That's not the same man. If this man comes up to you in a dark alleyway, it's to try and get you to dump all your money into Fartcoin, okay? And it's also nice to see this movie using built-in audio description for blind people.
He stood there like a man who knew he was right.
In fact, the narration is just one of the indicators that the filmmaking here is really starting to fall apart. There's just weird choices all over the place.
You see, his name was... Who is John Galt?
They didn't even match the words together. What the Great, whatever. The movie's bad. What a shame. Let's journey on and see what final drops of plot they've managed to wring out the source material for this final ideological scooter to the shins of my brain. Well, I'd like to see you do any better. After our prologue, Dagny crashes her plane so hard again that she switches actors again, and she finally gets to meet John Galt, who tells her that they've managed to keep outsiders out of the little libertaria on the prairie by building a big refracting bubble? Because of course they have no evil government, and therefore their technology is far beyond ours, and I wonder what the soup that used to be my brain tastes like. Not good. I also love the way that the end of part 2 is all like... And here it's just, yeah, that's me, Johnny Galt. I work in HR and I love Fridays. Did you know it's actually called ephebophilia? And as if I wasn't in enough of a fever dream already, we have the insurance salesman from Groundhog Day and Duck Phillips from Mad Men already living there. I really did at this point expect actors who had been in one direct-to-DVD movie and a mattress store commercial to be leading this thing. How are they still getting people with actual IMDb pages? It had better be blackmail, not a love of the material. I swear to God, Herman. And yeah, they're both probably playing two people who were in the last movies, but I do not care enough to go back and check who, and this movie doesn't seem to be interested in reminding me. Part 2 had the clunky recap of every character and who they are for the entire first half. This one says, come on now, buddy. If you're still watching at this point, you know who each and every one of these counters are, and your Fountainhead copies are all sticky, and your mother has started bringing up the smell at dinner.
Your house?
So it looks like Dagny's head injury might have knocked the soul back into her. She seems to be expressing at least one emotion now, that of, wowee, a new idyllic paradise in the woods that big and strong John Galt is carrying me through. Hey, wait a minute. This is a tradwife fantasy, isn't it? A straight tradwife fantasy. What the So they bring a doctor in to look at Dagny, and he scans her with this incredible handheld x-ray machine. How was this device invented, pray tell?
It's a diagnostic device I developed here in Atlantis. It's amazing what can be accomplished without red tape.
Did I or did I not tell you, dear audience? I have invented a device that could cut costs and lead to quicker diagnoses for millions. Instead of sharing this technology with the wider world, I will hoard it so that only the rich people in my weird cult town can use it. I am very smart. So Galt heroically carries Dagny to bed.
You destroyed my line. You're the destroyer.
And then we cut to...
The world crisis was worsening.
I still have absolutely no idea why they've decided to suddenly start narrating in this one. I guess they thought, it's the final part, just chuck whatever in there. It's not even providing any context. It tells us Dagny has gone missing and that they've increased the bounty for Ragnar the pirate. No, I am not making that up. This is another character who's been mentioned in the previous 2 films but has not been relevant to the plot, and he finally shows up in person in this movie to also not be relevant to the plot, not even a little bit. Dagny goes to a welcome party thrown by Galtville for her, where we get to see how overwhelmingly white this libertarian paradise is. What a shocker. John Galt tells Dagny a little more about the town's reason for existing, namely that they are on strike. So Dagny asks them, oh, what are you on strike for?
Nothing. And we're not trying to impose our values on the world that we left behind. They're free to continue to believe as they want, whatever they want. But they're going to have to do it without our help.
Then that's not a strike. You're just quitting. There is a temporary nature to a strike. It continues until the workers' demands are met, or they otherwise agree to come back to work, or, God forbid, they get fired. If you just walk away and don't come back, that's not... You know, I was YouTube SAS doing a funny mad before. Now I'm actually pissed off. But no, keep going, please. Keep going with your little, well, life is so hard for the rich stage play. Please, I'm delighted to see where it ends up. At the bottom of the deepest river, one can only hope.
While the government was busy...
Oh my god! So Galt makes Dagny a proposal. Stay in the gulch. Don't look at me, that's what he calls it. So, Dagny asks John to hire her for a job so she can pay her way.
I'll cook, clean, do laundry in exchange for room and board.
Yes, she actually wants to take a break from her high-paying corporate executive job that she can't even be fired from now to become John Galt's maid. Are you sure that 3 conservative men wrote this script based on a book written by one of the most conservative women of all time? Because I can't even tell.
Our first rule is that no one provides unearned sustenance for another person.
Gee, sorry son, I'd love to feed you, but Mr. Galt says that giving food to your starving children without profiting off them first is woke. In fact, I'm sorry, why would anyone follow John Galt at all? In the previous movies, there was at least an element of mystery to who this man is, but now, imagine this guy, this random dude that you could go to a Best Buy and find 50 of. Imagine him coming up to a billionaire on the street and being like, I know a place with no rules where you can live like a king. He's getting pepper sprayed. Oh, but how could I forget? Dagny gets to go on a little tour of the, I guess, town square of the Gulch. She's using a walking stick now to turn up for the books that they didn't just put her down, and she visits some of the shops where... Are you serious? Okay, so back in the divided states of America, the head of state is meeting with the all-new and improved James Taggart. Again, the vibes have been shifted beyond any metric that the human mind can calculate, folks. They've gone from emo to coke fiend to like... Look, it brings me no pleasure to describe yet another male cast member as just some guy, but I mean, look at him. Can you discern any personality traits at all from this? I mean, he sure is sitting in that room. He's definitely there. So, heading on back to Johnny's wild ride, old Galt decides to show Dagny where he keeps a working version of the generator that one of her past regenerations found at the 20th Century Motor Company.
The motor generates enough power for the entire valley. In fact, it could power the entire west coast.
But it's not going to, because then that would be providing sustenance for nothing in return. I've never even heard of eugenics. What are you talking about? He tells Dagny that she won't be able to force her way into the cube in the woods that houses the generator. The only way into it is by gifting him Reddit gold and following his Sigma Tips Instagram account. Oh, I only kid. You get it by reciting the little Boy Scout motto that he has inscribed above the door.
I swear by my life and my love of it, that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine.
Thank you, Johnny. If I could be bothered to derive any meaning at all from that incoherent string of words, I'm sure it would kill me instantly. But John says that Dagny can't see the engine because she hasn't taken that super secret special oath yet and shuts the door in her face. We are then treated to the most joyless falling in love montage I think I've ever seen in my life. This literally looks like stock footage that they whacked some royalty-free music over the top of.
Do not take Trulicity if you have a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer, if you have multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if you're allergic to Trulicity.
Plus, what drama for Dagny to be shacking up with another man when she's been cozying up to Henry Reardon all this time. Gee, why don't we have a look at what he thinks about all this? Oh. Riddler got him, I guess. Wait, I'm sorry, that's a total lie. Of course Henry Reardon is in this one. They wouldn't just jettison the second most important character in the entire thing like that. That would be ridiculous. Here he is.
Henry Reardon continued his search for Dagny Taggart.
And then it, of course, cuts to the plotline of him continuing his search for... He's searched for where the rest of his scenes went, I guess. In fact, I'm also searching for some scenes, ideally scenes where anything happens at all, because we are over half an hour into this hour and 40 movie and nothing has happened. Dagny is messing around in Libertalia, Henry is in deep cover to stop the Joker from poisoning Gotham's water supply with free vaccines or something, and the head of state is doing something evil while the man who has assumed James Taggart's identity blue screens next to him. The Dagny stuff specifically is so dull, so just, oh wow, look at this perfect place that I've just found myself in with nothing wrong at all, that I keep expecting it to turn into a horror movie at any moment. I mean, think about it, a young woman suffers an accident and is forced to rely on help from an isolated commune with a lot of rules and a mysterious leader who she has essentially press ganged into working for, and he's got a secret thing in the woods that she's not allowed to look at unless she mutters some strange incantation.
We're out of chocolate cake.
Oh, you scared me.
You want to go ahead and run that by me one more time, Johnny? Now this is a man I can trust. To loom over my bed while I'm sleeping. And then also describe how he stalked Dagny in the most perverted way possible.
When's the first time you saw me?
You were standing on the Taggart passenger platform. You were wearing an evening gown and a shawl. And if your shawl had slipped any further down, you would have been standing there naked.
You know, this subtle and deeply emotional heart-to-heart between Dagny and John is nice, but I just wish there was someone around to loudly interrupt them and tell me what's going on in America. Oh, thank God. So our helpful narrator tells us that everything with Taggart has gone even more to shit than last time, which means that Dagny is once again torn between chilling in the wilderness and going back to help out her dumbass brother. But this time we get to hear exactly what John Galt himself thinks about all this.
If any of your uncertainty is a conflict between your heart and your mind, follow your mind.
That wasn't the advice I was expecting.
So she decides to go back to Taggart. Again, this is just thrilling plot development, it really is. And John has a big sulk about it because he's the most emotionally mature libertarian ever to exist, but then he gets over it and whacks a blindfold on her and gets her on his plane that he flew at Pearl Harbor, apparently. After they land, she gets on yet another train, I swear to God these movies have made me pro-car, and gives Henry a call. Oh viewer, how could I have lied to you again? Of course we haven't seen the last of Henry. Hang on. I'm getting word from our eye in the sky. What's that? We have seen the last of Henry, but we haven't heard the last of him.
Hank. Dagny. I'm so sorry.
We'll see each other soon. Who's John Galt?
Wow. Henry's exit was just like the rest of his character arc. Non-existent, and I wasn't paying attention anyway. Also, he sounds pretty chill about Dagny's reappearance, considering that our friend the narrator burst into the story a few minutes ago with Dateline, Reardon searches for Taggart, hopes of more premarital no-no rapidly dwindling. In fairness, this is also how everyone else reacts to Dagny suddenly reappearing after being missing for, I assume, at least a week. There was a high possibility that she was dead and her own brother is talking to her like she just came back from the grocery store. American business leaders are still disappearing all over the shop and the Orwellian super government doesn't have any questions for her. Ah, wait, never mind, fellas, pack it up. Can't have anything to do with John Galt. She's a woman. An adult woman. But there's one more horrible surprise for Dagny in store. James has collaborated with the government to push forward the Railway Unification Act. What horrific consequences this wrought upon Mother America. What hell hath been unleashed upon us all.
You've nationalized the railroad.
Wait!
This is treated with the same gravity as if Dagny just found out that James had brought their dead parents back and then whacked them over the head with a shovel a few times to send them back to the underworld. I'm assuming their parents are dead, they're never actually mentioned. Perhaps they just refused to talk to their children, both are equally possible. Then again, I do understand why Dagny would be so horrified at this prospect. I myself live in a country that used to live under the tyranny of nationalised rail until the private companies came along and liberated us all. And everything's so much better now. It's so much better now. It's so much better now. Oh, also, the head of state is planning to make a big speech on TV, which his PR people are predicting will be the most watched broadcast in history. In the meantime, I take back everything I said about the first half of this movie being boring and nothing happening, because at least it's in a new location, okay? At least it's like a relatively new scenario. Because the second that Dagny is back, it's the exact same arguments as the last two movies. You're running the company into the ground with your bad decision making. We keep getting told that America is falling apart, but besides maybe 5 minutes total across this whole trilogy of people holding up signs and a single homeless person writing the most cringe headstone in existence, it looks pretty fine to me. Probably because these rich assholes are entirely insulated from everything, and even if they weren't, I don't care, because they're all dead-eyed zombies who would push a baby in front of a car if there was an even 2% chance that it would make their stock price go up by half a point. I'm fine, keep going. So anyway, this time Dagny also gets to go to the EVOL government meeting where the head of state says that they are sacrificing Minnesota for the greater good. I'm not quite sure how. I think they're taking away all their snow or something. But Dagny has to leave early because some of the signals on the railway have broken and there's not enough workers left to fix them. So she rallies all the workers to get it done on time, and then John Galt is also there. Hey buddy. After Dagny instructs the workers to get the line fixed, we then see... I can only use the word pursue here. Yeah, and then they bang in the electrical room. How romantic. With the way Taggart ignores safety regulations, and there's bound to be more than just metaphorical sparks flying, you know what I'm saying? And then she just leaves, doesn't bother to stay behind and check on the workers' progress, just gets her rocks off and goes. Actually, there's no way John Galt got her to finish. Can a libertarian even find the right area? Let's discuss this in detail for the next 5 to 10 minutes. Oh, and by the way, you remember the woman from the shop that old Jim Taggart married in 5 seconds in the last movie? Well, she dies just as quickly. Seriously, the narrator tells us...
At the same time, Cheryl Taggart, Jim's wife, learned she had married a fraud.
And then the next scene, it's a newspaper headline. Also very interesting that James's first reaction to this unexplained death is...
No, that's not my fault. I had nothing to do with it.
Then Dagny gets a flashback with her where Cheryl is like, wow, this whole time I thought James was running the railroad, but now I realize it was you doing all the work. Can you ever forgive me? And Dagny replies with... So Cheryl discovered her husband was an incompetent moron and immediately died? Well, I hope it's not contagious or we're going to have to quarantine the First Lady. That one was for your boomer parents. I hope they enjoyed it. And then it's time for the head of state's TV broadcast. I am so lost once again. This plot is either glacial or has a million things happening every second. No in between. That's cinema, baby. I also must have missed that Dagny is supposed to be part of this. I guess that was another thing covered at the EVOL luncheon, but she decides to walk out instead, saying...
Cheryl deserved better.
What a noble stance for her to take regarding the woman that she had one interaction with in the previous movie where she insulted her, and also one acid flashback involving her a few minutes ago. But wait! What's this? The signal's being hijacked! It's... Scarecrow about to poison the Gotham water supply, apparently. Quick, somebody light the Reardon signal. Okay, so we're now at probably the most well-known part of the original book because it's where John Galt gives a big speech summing up the themes of the novel, just in case your skull hasn't fully caved in yet from being beaten over the head with them. And when I say big speech, I mean big speech. In the original book, this little Galt talk goes on for 90 pages. Or, let me put it in another perspective. This guy, and by extension Ayn Rand, goes on about how great objectivism is for 33,376 words. That is a novella by itself. It's longer than Of Mice and Men, Animal Farm, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's only 5,000 words shorter than The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. No wonder that book is such a brick. No wonder there's no plot to this thing, because it's the same as it ever was. It's an excuse for Ayn Rand to ramble incessantly about why being asked to share isn't fair and she should be able to do whatever she likes because she's 9 years old. Thankfully, Galt only jerks himself off on live TV for about 4.5 minutes in the movie, which is still way too long, and of course his rallying cry incites a revolution among the general populace. Yeah, let's give those millionaires what they want, come on guys! So now everyone is actively looking for John Galt, especially the government, who try to bribe Dagny into helping them find him. She lies, saying that she doesn't know how to find him, and then looks him up in the Taggart employee directory? You're telling me that in this entire fetid saga, she never thought to just type his name into... He's been working at Taggart the entire... Just let it go. Just let it go. There's only half an hour of this thing left. Only half an hour. There can't be anything too crazy left. Dagny finds Galt. He shows her that he has the engine. The government agents break in and the engine vanishes because they're not pure enough of heart. As in, they open the door and it literally teleports away. How? No, it's fine. It's fine. We're completely into the realm of fantasy now. I'm watching an episode of Power Rangers if they were all the white one. It's fine. Let's just get ending. Please, go. Quick as you like. So, John gets taken to the White House where the head of state offers him a position as basically his top special advisor who can do whatever he likes, reshape the economy and the country to his whim, finally abolish the age of... Okay, I don't think YouTube will let me do that joke for the 8th time. But John refuses this new position because of his principles. What principles specifically?
But that kind of job shouldn't exist. No one should have that kind of power.
But you already have that kind of power in your little mountain turbo-capitalist commune. You literally made up every rule in that town. You are its unelected leader. You've already done this job on a smaller scale. But now that it's a big country, the very country that you left because they weren't doing the things that you wanted them to do, which they are now willing to do, because it's now that country, you have for some reason decided to disappear once again, headfirst up your own ass. And I'm calm. I'm fine. I love this movie. It's so good. My favourite part of this movie is how there's only 20 minutes left and there's no way that they can deliver a satisfying conclusion to any of this. Let's watch the final few cars join this crash, shall we? So they take John Galt to the State Science Institute, which has a Soviet star on it, because of course it does, and then we get another, oh, by the way, Cheryl's dead moment when the narrator tells us,
once standing as a monument to American individualism, the Taggart Bridge had finally surrendered to regulation.
oh, okay. They start interrogating Galt at the SSI, where they immediately take his shirt off to electrocute him. I mean, what is this, Doctor Who Series 1, Episode 6? Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So from this point on, the movie suddenly takes a hard right turn into an action thriller where Dagny and some of the other Galtists bust into the top secret high security government building to rescue John Galt. It's just like trying to wake up your audience when they all died 3 hours ago. At one point, Dagny gives a guard a big speech telling him to disobey orders or he'll be shot, and the guy responds like this.
I'm not supposed to make decisions about my life. 2. I haven't said I won't. I haven't said I will. I'm only following orders. Ugh.
Like, why does he decide to have an existential crisis about the banality of evil instead of just letting the scary lady with the loaded pistol move past him? Also, Dagny just straight up murdered someone and doesn't seem to care at all. I guess he was designated unprofitable. Meanwhile, back in the torture chamber that comes standard in every government department headquarters, James Taggart throws a massive tantrum when they temporarily stop electrocuting Galt.
Be back, you son of a bitch.
The Galtists bust in, Dagny brings John back from a literal flatline through the power of love and finally reciting his cult motto to him, and they get him back onto the roof while the heroic music plays. And then they gaze out at the city as all the power goes out because they don't have enough Liberty Volts left to run the generators. He better not say it. I swear to God. Don't you dare, bro.
No. It's the beginning.
Oh my God, are you serious? I hate this movie. I hate this movie so goddamn much. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. I wish I was dead. I guess I have to do some kind of summary now. A little wrap up about what I thought about these movies. My personal takeaway. Well, personally, I wish that someone had taken away my eyes and ears before I started watching these movies. And hell, take my brain too. I sure don't need it anymore. It would be beating a dead iron at this point to talk about how the ideology of these films is just as incoherent and dumb as libertarian ideology always is. How to justify the way that you think, you have to invent a totally fictional dystopia where the American government doesn't immediately bend to the whims of every corporation going. I mean, if you think that requiring a license to drive a car is an example of state tyranny, then you're going to have a whale of a time. These are the films for you. But anyone else will be able to see that these movies are so on the nose about what they're supposedly advocating for that you'd have a more engaging time just reading the Wikipedia page for libertarianism. The choices in lighting, editing, and camera work get more baffling as the trilogy goes on. The acting is passable to, can you even spell the word emotion? From beginning to end, there's very little that's redeemable here. Apart from Howard Hamlin in part 2, that goes without saying. Yeah. That about wraps it up. This trilogy gets 0 unpissed on graves out of 10 from me. Go away. Oh gee whiz, I wonder why Owen looks so red for the whole video. Oh well, it's because I decided to film during a heat wave in a suit. I'm a very smart man.